Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating piece of source material. It's essentially a spiritual manifesto, and what makes it so captivating is how it just immediately grips you. The source kicks things off with a highly provocative hook, boldly claiming that you didn't just click on this by chance. Oh no. According to the speaker, you were divinely summoned to watch, and your being here is actually the result of a targeted spiritual signal. Pretty intense, right? We're going to decode exactly how this message is constructed, how it attempts to empower its audience, and the profound psychological triggers it's trying to activate. Let's get right into it.
Right off the bat, the source throws us into a completely unique vocabulary. The speaker takes common everyday physical sensations and radically reframes them. Got a regular old headache? Well, the speaker says it's not a headache, it's a frequency upgrade. By doing this, the manifesto takes the totally mundane or uncomfortable aspects of daily life and elevates them into these intense, meaningful spiritual events. It's telling the audience that their discomfort is actually a sign of an awakening, which really sets the stage for a deeply empowering narrative. So, here's our roadmap for decoding this today. 1. The Chosen One's frequency. 2. Tactics of spiritual dilution. 3. The hidden internal agreement. And 4. The final activation.
Starting with Section 1, The Chosen One's frequency, decoding the spiritual signal.
The source argues there is an undeniable rising spiritual signal within you. And according to the speaker, a chosen one doesn't just feel slightly out of place, they experience very specific, intense symptoms. We're talking about a bone-level weariness that a good night's sleep just cannot fix, sudden surges of energy that feel way too large for your body, an uncanny prescience, like knowing things before they even happen, and a kinetic energy that literally shifts the atmosphere of a room before you even speak. What's absolutely crucial here is that the source presents these traits not as flaws or anxiety or burnout, but as undeniable indicators of a powerful divine design. You aren't just exhausted, you're carrying a spiritual weight.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the source directly contrasts our negative self-talk against a totally empowering spiritual interpretation. The speaker acknowledges that you might secretly fear your feelings of grandeur are just arrogance, or that your intense energy is just a delusion, or maybe even a sign of weakness. But the manifesto labels these fears as the enemy's lies. On the flip side, it claims these exact same feelings are actually proof of your intensifying signal strength, your role as a divine disruption, and an irrevocable calling that simply cannot be taken away by your mistakes.
All right, move into Section 2, Tactics of Spiritual Dilution, the Mechanics of Opposition.
So, you might be wondering, if this internal frequency is genuinely so powerful, how does the opposition, or the enemy, attempt to stop it? Well, the source posits that outright destruction of the Chosen One is actually too obvious. Instead, the primary strategy is something called dilution. The goal isn't to crush you directly, but to trick you into pouring your precious, concentrated energy into environments and relationships that constantly drain you. It's basically a clever containment strategy where you are manipulated into becoming your own containment system, voluntarily silencing your power through sheer exhaustion.
To make this abstract concept a bit more concrete, the speaker uses these really vivid metaphors. They argue that mixing your divine essence with the mundane world doesn't make you more humble, it just ruins your potency. Think about it. A highly concentrated essential oil mixed with a ton of water. Its aromatic power is totally diminished. Refined gold mixed with lesser metals just loses its luster. Distilled light filtered through murky water becomes completely obscured. The speaker is telling the audience, you are the pure element, and the world is the dilutant trying to diminish your value.
So, the takeaway here is that society's constant demand for conformity essentially forces these chosen ones to compress their true, magnificent nature out of fear. The manifesto suggests that to survive the sharp edge of criticism or just the silence of disapproval, you learn to fold yourself down. You put on this mask of normalcy, because the world was perpetually ill-equipped to handle the untamed essence you were carrying. It's a really powerful narrative because it instantly validates the viewer's deepest feelings of alienation.
Which brings us to Section 3, the hidden internal agreement, excavating the subconscious wound.
Now we arrive at the source material's major plot twist. The speaker meticulously builds up to this pivotal moment, asking a really profound question: what is truly holding you back? After spending all this time talking about external enemies, energy vampires, and a world that demands conformity, the source completely flips the script. The ultimate blockage, surprisingly, isn't the enemy, and it isn't societal systems at all.
The big revelation here is that the ultimate sabotage is a hidden internal agreement. The speaker argues that the deepest impediment is a profound psychological wound where you accepted the lie that you're inadequate. At some point, you subconsciously agreed with the voices that minimized you. And this toxic narrative became buried so deep that it actually started to feel like your own authentic voice, causing you to actively self-sabotage the exact destiny you're trying to reach.
To validate this struggle, the source paces through some well-known biblical case studies but completely reinterprets them through this lens of frequency and identity. Take the prophet Elijah, for example. The source focuses on Elijah hiding under a tree, totally exhausted and wanting to give up. But the speaker argues this wasn't divine abandonment or failure. No, it was a sacred space for recalibration and renewal before his most significant assignment. Your delays and your isolation, the source implies, are precisely this kind of divine preparation.
Next up, we look at Moses. The speaker interprets Moses' famous stammer not just as a physical flaw, but as the internal, palpable echo of a fractured identity. It's framed as the trauma of a man who didn't know if he truly belonged in the palace of Egypt or out in the desert. The source points out that God healed this not by just magically fixing the stutter, but by anchoring Moses' identity and the divine I am. The core message to the viewer? Your identity isn't rooted in your history or your mistakes, but in something immutable and eternal.
Finally, the source presents Daniel as the absolute ultimate example of breaking this hidden agreement to stay small. When faced with a massively oppressive system, Daniel didn't negotiate, and he certainly didn't hide. He deliberately prayed by an open window. The speaker frames this as a profound act of defiance, flat out refusing the implicit agreement to practice invisibility. He chose to expose his light, explicitly leaving the window open rather than dimming that light just to make everyone else comfortable. And of course, the source challenges the viewer to open their own metaphorical window.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, the final activation, breaking the contract.
Everything in this manifesto has been leading the audience right to this climactic call to action. The source material builds to these specific, highly empowering steps. The speaker actually guides the viewer to place a hand on their heart and declare a breaking of the old contracts. The instructions are incredibly clear. 1. Stop compressing the divine deposit within you. 2. Consciously break every spoken or unspoken agreement you ever made to shrink, dim your light, or accept those limiting labels. And 3. Step out of that compression and into a full, unhindered release of your true, divinely appointed identity.
We wrap up with this incredibly striking analogy from the source. A chosen one who remains unaware of their power is essentially a weapon that never fires, just safely stored away and neutralized by the enemy. It is a really urgent call to arms that frames self-actualization not just as a nice idea, but as a cosmic necessity. Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. Does this manifesto merely take our common, everyday human exhaustion and feelings of alienation and just dress them up in grand spiritual language? Or does it successfully tap into a profound, universal psychological yearning for divine purpose and meaning that we all secretly share? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating explainer with me.